My name is Kelsey Rimage. I am Partnerships Manager here at Inman Global, and today's panel is going to be all about success stories. So we do have 4 wonderful panelists from schools across the nation who have had incredibly successful esports programs. So we want to talk to them today, learn about what makes their university's program so prominent in the scene and how they can help other universities as well. So I'm going to go around and introduce them and their schools that they do come from, and then after we'll talk a little bit about why they're successful and get into the panel itself. So first we have Chad Smeltz from Harrisburg University. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
We have Kathy Chung from UCI, back in California like me. Dan Clark from Maryville University, and last but not least, Nessa Harrison coming to us from Canada from UBC. So thank you guys all for being here. I definitely, going to UCSB, we all looked up to all your guys' programs and tried to emulate that and grow our programs as well. So I know there's a lot of people here that are going to be very excited to hear about this panel. But I did want to go around and just introduce your guys' university program a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the awards you have won and the tournaments that you have succeeded in, for the audience, just to get a bigger perspective of who we're talking to. So I'll start with Chad.
Hey, so I'm Chad. I'm the director of esports for Harrisburg University. Our university is entering its 3rd year of the program upcoming, which is super cool. So we just started our 3rd year in fall. A couple of the big things that we've done is that we've won the last 2 years of Overwatch National Champions for TESPA, and then we've also hosted our own tournament called the Hue Invitational, which actually this event is part of the Hue Invitational. So coming up in the next day or two this weekend, we're going to be having teams compete in Overwatch and League of Legends, and those are probably 2 of the biggest things we've done as of recent.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for also partnering with Inman Global. We're excited to see your tournament tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, going over to Kathy, let's tell us a little bit about UCI.
Hello. So I am assistant director at the UCI Esports program. We were the first public university to have an esports department back in September 2016, and I believe one of the first to have a public arena open as basically a LAN center on campus for both students and the general public. In terms of competitive accomplishments, probably most well known for the 2018 College League of Legends Championship, in which we traveled to China afterwards for the international championship, and that was a whole ordeal. International travel is pretty difficult, but it was a really cool experience. And our program is just very much grown from the grassroots, and we had a really long history of club success before we got a department going.
Awesome. Dan, you want to tell us a little bit about Maryville?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Daniel Clark. I'm the director for Maryville Esports. We are in our 5th year now. I would say my favorite accomplishments that we've had is we were the 2nd school in the country to offer scholarships for esports. We graduated our first class of 4-year varsity esports students last year, or actually that was 2 years ago. I think we were one of the first schools to actually have 4-year students to graduate through their esports program. We've also won 2 CLOL championships, and we've come in 2nd at the International Invitational 3 times, losing to China. So we've also become 2nd twice in Overwatch to Chad's team. So hopefully this year we're going to break that curse. But yeah, so it's been a lot in the last 5 years. Oh, another thing that I would say I'm pretty proud of is, so when I came to the school in the first place, we only had 5 kids in our esports club, and now in year 5 we have 380. So it's been growing pretty rapidly, and we're pretty proud of the impact that it's made on campus.
Yeah, no, that's great. You guys have had so much success, and we've seen that from all of you guys. Nessa, do you want to talk to us a little bit about UBC and their success?
Sure. My name is Nessa Harrison. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships and Relations for the UBC Esports Association. We're located in Vancouver, Canada, which is also part of North America, which is often forgotten by collegiate. I guess that our achievements include winning ULOL in 2016. We've come top 5 in Dota 2 5 years now. Our most recent achievements are in the Valorant promo gaming tournaments. We've come second twice for both of their events. We're hoping that we'll come first next time. But yeah, that's pretty much what UBC has been up to.
Yeah, no, it seems like, especially now in a COVID time, it's really about making these proactive these universities proactive online, making sure the tournaments are running, creating new leagues, and participating as well, and getting that off the ground. So you guys have all done a great job, and obviously, even before COVID times, there's always been this prominence of all your guys' universities, which really does put a mark onto the collegiate scene. But I did want to talk about the other schools that maybe don't have this presence yet and that are building their programs. It's really hard to get a program to be standout, that's for sure. You need a lot of different aspects. But I did want to go around and ask you guys, what do you guys think is the most common mistake that universities make when trying to make their program successful? I'll start with Chad.
I was going to say, so there's a lot of places that you can start, so it's really hard. So I'll just kind of focus on one or two small things. But the first one for me is you need to find somebody that's knowledgeable about the space. So when you're building out a program, it's super important that you're not doing it, quote unquote, just because or just because it's popular. Because if you're trying to build a program from the ground up and you don't know the space, there are a lot of easy pitfall mistakes that I think we'll probably cover throughout this conversation that you can kind of jump into. And so, for example, like the easiest one that I have to reference like literally every day to people is that they think that like a director can be the head coach of 3 different esport teams at the same time as being the person who does sponsorships, as the person who does all of those things. And everybody knows in esports like you wear multiple hats, but at the same time, like you wouldn't have a soccer coach coach a football team that coaches a basketball team. Like it doesn't really line up like that. So I think when it comes to like coaching, for example, that's one easy pitfall. But there are many like this. So I think we'll kind of bounce it around and see what other people say too.
What I see a lot of schools do is they frame it wrong, or they try to force it into something that might not work for their campus. Like I see a lot of these non-endemic groups going around trying to build programs at different institutions, and they try to take this pretty cookie cutter approach to it when it's really not cookie cutter. Each university kind of has its own needs and its own kind of vision for their esports program, what they want it to be. Do they want to win championships? Do they want to have a big esports culture on campus with a lot of kids in their clubs? And a lot of times they try to force this under athletics, and like especially like when you're at a Division I school where an athletic director is worrying about basketball, football, et cetera, you're not going to get the most out of your esports program when you have to battle with those things. We aren't NCAA, we aren't regulated by traditional athletics, so you can be creative with how you frame your program under your institution. It can be through student life. You can do it through one of the schools in the university. There are many ways to kind of work this out, and I think that schools kind of see the model that other schools are using and try to adopt them when it might not be the right thing for their campus.
Yeah, and on the note of what you have both covered, the kind of cookie cutter approach, or also kind of honing in on too specific of an idea when you're setting out, not knowing what's actually healthy or even relevant to your campus. I think that's the biggest thing I always have to talk to universities about is you have to know your audience, you have to know your own purpose, and you have to know your motivations for why you're doing this. I understand people wanting to create esports programs because they don't want to be left out of that. And now it's becoming such a common thing that it's awesome to continue building the collegiate space. And that's why we do panels like this, right? Is to encourage other people to get involved, but hopefully to do it the right way. So one I want to hone in on is kind of remembering that your players are also students. It's oftentimes easy to fall into this pitfall of treating it like a professional or even like, tier 3 kind of team where they need to scrim all the time. They need to meet all these obligations for their scholarship. And then you realize they also have to do homework. They also have to go to class. They also want to get a job after college. Not all of these kids are looking to go pro in esports afterwards. So that's something that I always try to push is think about how much value you're actually giving to the student as a person, as a human, as a student. In addition to obviously all the other things they care about, having fun and building their repertoire within playing. But, we look a lot at student outcomes. We look a lot at career tracks, building up their resumes on stuff outside of gaming as well.
Yeah, no, I think those are excellent points to touch on. Nessa, did you have anything to add to top off the question?
I think that because our club doesn't fit the cookie cutter standard of an esports association, I think that I can speak to this a bit. Our club is actually more event based than it is traditional esports player based. It's kind of just a way to get both the players and the more casual side of the community who are looking to try out esports involved. And I think that like one of the things that we've struggled with a lot is trying to connect with the admin of our university, because I know that like all of your schools are quite integrated with actual university admin, whereas UBCA has been quite detached as much as we've been trying to. But one thing that they always try to do is just throw money at external sources when it's kind of like, we're right here, we can help you. And then it ends up that there's always a lot of disconnect. And I think that like trying to get on the same ground and like, as Chad mentioned earlier, trying to like show them that there's so many pitfalls that you can easily fall into and there's so many things that you need to avoid, but and like having that experience firsthand is something that you can share with them. I think that that's something that you should always like try to talk about with your university admin when trying to move your esports associations forward.
Yeah, and to make off that point, that brings up another great question that I did want to ask. You know, it's always a huge question. Even with the UCSB, when I was on Gaucho Gaming, I was heading partnerships there. I was doing sponsorships, and we would have to do quarterly meetings with the administration at UCSB, and that would always be quite a task, you know, explaining what esports is every single time I go in there, even though they're the same people every time. But from your guys' experiences, what is something that you wish that admin at these universities would pay more attention to with esports? Or do you, if they were listening right now, what advice would you give them to help integrate them into the esports scene, especially in collegiate?
I can start. So usually the first thing that I really like to do is, and that I advocate for people that are trying to start programs, is find your champion and like inside of the school that you can kind of filter all of the information into, and have them also help you in talking to administration. So this is very relevant for clubs and students and things like that. If you can find whoever your advisor is, or maybe go past that, because generally speaking, admins in administrations have a hard time listening to students about this. They'll listen occasionally, but it doesn't come across the same way as if you have somebody else working in the university that can understand esports somewhat and explain it to them in university terms. You have to be really good at understanding what a university needs and wants and being able to explain that part, as well as why esports is important at the same time. And so if you can do that, if you have that step already accomplished, then it's getting that person as knowledgeable as possible to explain to the, whether it's the president or whether it's the CFO or anybody else who they're explaining to, because that's how you can get things faster. It's always about climbing that tier to try and get to the person who can make decisions, and it's really hard to do. And so at smaller universities, typically, I think it's a little bit easier, to be honest. I know at Harrisburg, I have it pretty easy in that regard. Because like Nessa said, you know, we have our president that's directly involved, and I know Dan does too, for example. And so like, that's really nice, but most universities don't have that. So find a champion that can get behind your cause and push the heck out of it. So.
Yeah. Dan, can you agree with that, especially coming from a smaller university?
Just me and Chad have very similar minds, so I agree completely with what Chad said.
Yeah, no, I think this panel is very interesting because we have two sides of the spectrum. We do have UBC and UCI, which are traditionally bigger universities compared to Maryville and then Harrisburg. And so we do get to see that contrast and see where these things line up and where they differ, which is great for our audience that are coming out right now. Going over to you, Kathy, do you have any, coming from that bigger university where it does get a little bit more lost in all the thoughts from other clubs and whatnot, do you have any advice or anything that you wish you could tell them to help them see a bit clearer? Because, well, it seems like your admin does really support you guys, obviously, because you guys have a wonderful training arena. I've been there. I've seen it. It's beautiful. And I hope that other universities do look at that and say, wow, this is great. This is doing great things for our school. Let's try and implement this here. But I'm done talking. You can take it away. Sorry, just gushing a little bit about the UCI esports program.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your support and love. I can feel it. I guess from the bigger university perspective, it really is knowing who actually is a decision maker, that is difficult sometimes to identify who's going to okay a facility, who's going to okay scholarships, who's going to handle the scholarships, and all these things of like what you can or can't do. So for UCI, we were really blessed that when we were pitching the idea, we brought it to a bunch of different departments at first. We did talk to athletics, we talked to student affairs, we talked to some faculty members, and student affairs really stood up as kind of the champion for where we could house our department. And then just like a little history lesson as well is I had been at the school as a student since 2011. So I had helped build up that student community. So we had like a multi-pronged approach essentially. We were bringing in students from the club saying like how much their lives have changed from that community, how much it's affected their current jobs. We actually had anecdotes of students that chose UCI over a competing UC or a competing public university that's highly ranked solely for the gaming community and for the gaming club. So taking the student success and student life outcome as a big part of that. And then luckily we had Mark Deppy, our current director, who was then working for student government. That really helped because being embedded in student government, already working for student affairs, he knew the right people. He knew the chancellor, he knew the vice chancellors, he knew the people at the student center where we eventually built our facility. And it was really helpful knowing like who we need to get approval from and also get on board to help champion us as well. So early on, it was a matter of pitching to as many people as possible, getting the supporters from all aspects of the university, and acknowledging that as a research university, faculty are number one. So getting faculty on board, planning out research projects that we would amplify and work with, like that was so core to the strategy that some universities either don't have to deal with or forget that that's actually pretty important to their university as well. So thank God we had Mark on the administrative side and me on the student side to kind of come together and figure out a unique plan for UCI, but hopefully that can help some of the people out there too from bigger universities and from specifically research universities as well.
I would like to kind of echo that as well. Like it's super important to be able to speak to admins in a language that is important to them. So what I mean by that is like, let's say you're a club at a Division I school, getting data from other schools that are already successful, because a lot of us are willing to share things to help the space, is super important. Like for example, I was able to tell some admins at a school that I was helping out with recently that year one coming in, my first 5 varsity kids had abysmal GPAs, like really low GPAs, like because they were trying to go pro in high school. They weren't really spending a lot of time on studies, but they tested really high in standardized test scores. So there's some sort of disconnect between their ability to do school and what actually happened when it came to actual school. So being able to show the school that after the first year of putting these very gifted people in a situation where the esports stuff was structured alongside the academics, we were able to raise our program GPA to a 3.5 in year one. Wow. So things like that, if you're able to get statistics from like that from other schools in the space and speak admin language to admins, that's going to be huge for you. And it's as simple as reaching out to people in the space that have had programs for 3 to 5 years. Like we're out here, we're resources, we're willing to help you. And then also like my president is willing to talk to any other president in the country. So if you have admins that like would like to have an admin to admin perspective, sometimes that could be a game changer as well. So really like networking with people in the space that kind of have kind of walked the walk so far is also like a big thing that you can kind of do. And I can't talk for everybody in the call, but it seems what my experiences in collegiate esports, everyone's willing to kind of help each other.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's what the backbone is too, because it doesn't get off the ground unless you do help each other. It's not like one person is going to be funding this all and like bringing it up. It's like, it's definitely a communal effort, which makes, for me, collegiate esports so special because it is a community and nothing can really function without someone else. And you need that, like that support from even other universities as well. From UCSB, we reached out to the UCs a lot, especially like UCI, UCR, who had more established esports programs, UCLA as well, and learn from them to help develop and forward our program, like you were saying, Dan. It's about comparing and showing that this does work, that there are stats to back it up that do help students. Nessa, you were saying that your admin's already on board, and it makes sense. If you're a more event-focused esports program, like events bring revenue to the school. So I think it's a little bit easier to sell in that aspect where it's like, well, we have this huge student population. They're all in esports, an event, sponsors, money. But do you want to talk a little bit about that and just your process of going through it?
Our admin are actually not on board.
Oh, okay, never mind.
As awful as that sounds, last year was the closest that we came to having them on board, just because, like as Dan said, it's really important to have your university's admin like speaking in esports admin terms. And we had our president last year working extremely closely with them to promote our club on campus as a place that could be like a home to a lot of students, because we are one of the largest clubs on campus. I think we were second last year. Unfortunately, COVID pretty much put all of that to a halt. There was like an esports conference down in LA that like our club president flew down to with the president of our entire school, which was crazy. It was insane because we had never gotten that close to like having an actual established esports club on campus. It was kind of it's kind of difficult for UBC. I'm not sure what it is, but we have tried like pretty much all of the methods that Kathy and Chad mentioned as well. We've brought them statistics, we've brought them like evidence that esports on campus is a good idea. And it's just because last year, the Aquilini Group, which is a huge name in Vancouver because they own the Titans and like the COD team down in Seattle, because they were like showing big numbers and stuff like that. UBC suddenly got interested in esports, and that's why our admin started working together with our club more. Yeah, I think like the issue though is that they have a hard time seeing like how they can delegate scholarships to these students, because they don't have coaches on their side to be like, oh, I don't think that we can provide scholarships for your club because we don't know if the students are actually good enough. Like we have no way of figuring it out ourselves, I guess. So I think that Chad or Dan could probably speak more to that and knowing more about like scholarships, especially with Maryville, because I used to work with Overwatch and we heard about Maryville. We were like, dang, we were really jealous.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to scholarships on our end, contrary to popular belief, we don't actually give out full rides. We give out fill scholarships. So what that means is we do try to get the students as much academic scholarship as possible, and then we kind of fill the scholarship. That funding, some of it comes from on campus, some of it, but I would say like most of it comes from local donations and national donations. So like I'm on the phone all year. Maryville isn't a situation where I ask for a Rocket League team next year and I get a Rocket League team. The president will sit there and say, okay, Dan, you want a Rocket League team? Bring me the money and we'll do it. I'll give you the first couple steps to go try to find that, but if you want to do it, it's on you. That's also why I kind of value this school, is just because like they kind of put the onus on the people on campus to kind of go make things happen for themselves, and it helps like personal growth and helps people learn, blah 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 blah. But yeah, so for us, like my goal, like when I first started the program, was I wanted to get kids on full rides. Like I wanted kids to come not having to pay anything, because that wasn't something that really existed yet. And I wanted to kind of set that precedent. It wasn't about me wanting to come in and just dominate collegiate. That was never like my original goal. Obviously, like I wanted to win, but it was more so I wanted to kind of create a precedent to allow opportunities for students in the future. The reason why I initially got into collegiate, so I'm going to go on an anecdotal rant here, but the reason why I initially got into collegiate, so I've been working in the professional space for 8 years as well. I've been an LCS team owner. I've won multiple world championships and a few games. I've won plenty of things, and I've owned my own team, and now I'm a GM for another team. The reason why I initially got interested in collegiate, like Maryville came to me when I got the offer for my LCS team and tried to get me to do a program on campus. And I said no at the beginning, but then I kind of thought about it for a few weeks. And I have a player named Otter. I had a player named Otter on my LCS team. And prior to making LCS, he was like, he sacrificed everything to try to go pro. So he was the type of kid that would couch surf. He did whatever it took to like keep following the dream. And when we made LCS with that roster, I got to see just like the pure like weight and emotion of like the multi-year struggle to make this dream a reality, leave him finally, like it just was lifted off of him. And then 4 months later when we got relegated, I saw the exact opposite, because he was back to square one. Yeah. And so the reason why we kind of took the scholarship aspect really seriously was to give opportunities to players like that, so that they know, like, if my professional stuff doesn't work out, I have another chance to go into collegiate. I have another chance to make something work, even if like I can't necessarily afford it. So that was kind of the approach they made. I don't know if that was even relevant. I just kind of like jumped straight to that.
It definitely is, because like I think we all know how cutthroat esports is, especially you and Chad, who have worked directly with like LCS teams. And so I know people that have just struggled to try and make LCS, try to make that competitive professional career for years, and sometimes it's just not in the cards. And looking into collegiate, there are, thank God, now sponsorships and scholarships that allow people to go, because you give up everything for this. I know so many people that left their parents' house and just came to California to try to get spots on these teams. Yeah, like you said, couch surfing, giving up so much and having little to nothing because they're trying to chase their dreams. So it's really important that people, or schools like Maryville and like so many other schools are following suit, are trying to give this an opportunity, because it is skill. It's not like, we all agree it's not just a video game. It's not just something that, you play in your off time. It is a passion, and it is something that people can make careers out of. And it can start with collegiate. And I think that's something that should be more normalized. But that does bring up a great question with going from collegiate to the professional scene. Especially with Chad and Dan, who have both been in both worlds, do you think that the collegiate scene is prepared enough to actually make that transition? Because we have seen people like Exogen from Maryville now coaching over at CLG, could be the head coach next year. No one knows yet. But that, he started with humble beginnings, and look where he is now.
So this is something that I hear a lot of discussion about, like, what is the path to pro? Is the traditional path to pro through academy or contenders the path to pro, or is collegiate going to end up being the path to pro? I don't really like to entertain that as an argument, really. I foresee this eventually being a parallel to the path to pro, if that makes sense. So the whole point of collegiate, at least in my eyes, is to give players the opportunity to not have to give up an education while they do while they still pursue. Yeah, they might not be able to put the same amount of time into solo queue and team scrims as they would if they went to academy or contenders, but it allows them to kind of keep doing both instead of having to give up one or the other. And I think that you're going to see more people come to pro out of collegiate over time. We've had people like Shady from RMU. I'm probably going to forget a lot of people, but Sojin from Maryville. We had a player from Maryville go to Echo Fox. Rat on our Overwatch team last year played for the World Cup, for his World Cup team, Sweden. Henry for Portugal. There's going to be a lot more opportunities for collegiate players to kind of get to where they want to go, and I don't really see it as one's going to overtake the other eventually. I just see it as a parallel. Like just giving these people options is super important.
So I like that a lot for one big reason. I've talked to all of my students basically about, do you have any interest in becoming pro, like seriously? I think if you talk to a lot of students, they'll say yes, but they don't understand like what that actually means or the effort that it takes to do so. But the cool part is I think like half of my students genuinely are interested in becoming pro, and then half couldn't care less about it. They're going to college to get a degree. Some are going to college to get a degree to try and go pro. Some are also trying to do it because they don't want to, they like esports, but after university, maybe they'll just play it casually and it'll be a hobby. And that's really cool because you don't have to be the same type. You can do whatever you want. Like, it's individual to each student. And I love that. So talking about scholarships provide that opportunity for them to choose which way they have to go without having that weight constantly on their shoulders. And that's like one of my absolute favorite thing about collegiate, and it'll get better and better over time and more filled out. And that's exciting. That's super exciting for me.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear like within the collegiate space a lot is just like, a lot of people kind of see varsity teams beating up on club teams and it's unfair and we have all this funding. It's no, like, if everyone in North America could have the funding that we have, that's the world that we want. Like, we want to kind of set an example and like lead the way and show administrators the value that esports brings to the school across the country, like, and across all of North America. Like, that's the goal. It's not about us just winning championship after championship. Obviously, it's good for us if we win as many years as possible. But like, the goal is to kind of prop up the entire ecosystem. We want we want every school, all students across the country, to have opportunities to not only be varsity players, but go to a school and work on things that they just want to work in the industry. So broadcasting, like what Boise State's doing, all kinds of disciplines. Like we have interns from our club that work in analysis for our League of Legends team. We have one of them that works with VOD recording and scrim scheduling, just management stuff. Like we have people that work in event management for our Smash local. Like these are all things like we want to provide more opportunities, not only for the endemic player that might be like a challenger or grandmaster Overwatch player, but also to the average student to come slot into that program and find a way to get to where they want to go.
I want to shout out UCI for that, by the way, because they have a continuing education program specifically around that. And basically, my university out of the four of us is the newest. And like, I took things from UBC, Maryville, and UCI and combined it all into mine because like I admired them a lot for a lot of different reasons. And so I'm sure Kathy could probably talk a little more about it, but I got to teach a class at their continuing education for esports, around esports, and giving back to that side of the community, because being a player is like 1% of esports. There's an entire back end, the 99% that basically props up all of those players doing a variety of different jobs. And for example, UCI has done a wonderful job doing that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
I'll piggyback off of that. Very direct pass on. I think there's kind of speaking back to the idea of this path to pro. Like we've always kind of talked about pro being one of many options, which Chad and Dan have both talked about extensively. And I think something we haven't directly said, but have implied, is that some players will actually do the opposite, right? They might, oftentimes you see, to make it pro, you have that time dedication ask of needing to grind in high school and therefore maybe not go to school and even drop out of high school in some cases. But then you see these people that after their pro career is over, or maybe they get injured, or maybe they get tired of playing pro and they just want some backup options too. It's like going back to school and getting that degree that's also a valid path we're seeing right now. So we see all sorts of different paths from, go challenger to pro and then to school is also exists. And we want to make sure that we're able to sustain that and like support players that want to go back to school as well. And a big part of that is that I'm noticing that not only getting a degree, but also the personal growth that we're noticing. Oftentimes because they're skipping the entire college experience, living alone, doing their own laundry, figuring out how to cook. A lot of that experience is lost when you're placed in a player house and you have staff still doing that for you, just like your mom used to when you're at home,
Say it louder from people in the back. Oh my God.
Yeah, I just want to be completely honest that like when we get students that were in the pro scene, we see so much personal growth as well. And it's really, really awesome seeing them develop as people. So that's another aspect of college we haven't talked about yet, but is just as viable and very, very important. And speaking of the continuing education, certifications, and jobs outside of being a player, I think that's probably what we spend more time thinking about at UCI than the competitive aspect, is how can we support the student body broadly, right? Not the 5-10 people on the stage, on the screen all the time, but the managers, as everyone's mentioned, or the broadcasters, the graphic designers, people doing project planning, social media. And it's really awesome seeing all of our students that want to work in the esports industry take all that experience working in the collegiate space and moving on. Also looking at Kelsey as an example, right? Like doing all of those skills through SB actually prepared you for your roles today. And we just want to be able to continue to offer that experience for everyone.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important, everything that you just touched on, especially because I think most of us that have been around the esports scene for a while know back in the olden days, like no one had experience in these things. It was people that like literally did not have any experience in esports or anything like that because it was new. It was something that was coming up, and you didn't necessarily have like a pathway to it. And so now having that predisposition to learn about these things and to be prepared just makes esports better, not only for collegiate, just for the whole space in general. And speaking also as someone who I also work for Evolve Talent Agency as a talent agent, that is something that we do talk with our players a lot. What's next? That's a huge question because it is so up in the air. Some people didn't even finish their high school education. And so having something like that is wonderful. I'm very happy that I did hear about this. I actually wasn't super informed on it. So that's absolutely amazing. But we're coming a little bit short on time, but I did want to ask something that I know will be a hot question, and I want to hear you guys' perspectives. What do you guys think is the worst part about the collegiate esports scene so far?
So I would say like one of the biggest problems that the collegiate ecosystem faced, just from like a sustainability perspective and a growth perspective, is how insulated it is. So I think that like when we're planning these varsity programs, we really need to take like a content approach to it, because what we're seeing is, yeah, of course, we're all super passionate about collegiate esports, but to the average esports fan, no one's going to watch Maryville versus Harrisburg at the end of the year. Like we'll get like maybe 300 viewers, right? Or like for CLOL, we might get 18 to 24,000 viewers because they put it after LCS, or just because it's on the Riot stream that there's so many subscribers on it. We need to be able to make more people interested in collegiate, and so I think content is a super big focus for us moving forward. And I think that the documentary that Chad just put out is like very integral to that. I also think just figuring out ways to make this a non-endemic, like make this like important to non-endemic viewers as well is like one of our biggest things, because what that'll do is when we get viewers, it'll have the developers put more capital into the collegiate program. We'll get more just resources that will be able to trickle down to all these schools, like, and it'll help us have an easier job of convincing these D1 programs that have a ton of red tape to get involved. Because obviously, like at the end of the day, money is like what makes the world go round. And if there isn't like a clear way to generate it, a lot of people are going to be iffy about putting investment into it. The other part that I think is a big risk for us is we're kind of reaching a critical mass where everyone is paying attention to collegiate esports now. And so what we're seeing now is there's a lot of non-endemic to the collegiate space groups that don't have a demonstrated history of success in collegiate, going around and going to schools that don't have programs and misguiding them. And so I think that that's a risk in itself, is a lot of people misguided on what the right way is to build a program, being sold these cookie cutter models that might not work at every institution. I've actually considered quitting both my jobs multiple times to try to combat this, but I think that this is going to be something people trying to capitalize on our market before we're at a point where it's healthy to do so. That's another thing that we're going to be facing that I'm really not a big fan of seeing going around right now.
And really similar to what Dan brought up, but I think you had mentioned at the start of your answer the words sustainability and growth. And I just feel like that is such a challenge right now. Like, even though UCI is an established program, we don't receive funding right now from our university, and all the scholarships we offer, all the staff salaries have to come from somewhere. And a big chunk of that is from sponsors, partners, donations. And that's kind of where we're pivoting now, is how do we, really lock in, where does this money come from? Are we making sure that we're not getting, affected by, third parties, and their, obviously money comes at a price, right? Like they have their own motivations, and we have to make sure we partner with the right people, that they care about students, they care about research, they're the right. And thankfully we have a lot of awesome sponsors, but it's not always easy to make those connections and get the resources that you need. And we are already in such a good space. Like, we are in a good spot right now still, even though like COVID kind of slashed everyone's plans a little bit. But just think of all the hundreds of schools out there with programs that are also struggling. How do they grow? How do they stay sustainable, especially if the university has not committed 100% to that program just yet? And it's been, COVID is a big challenge right now. So while that's not like obviously reflective of a mistake that the community has made, I think everyone needs to think very, very seriously from a higher ed perspective in terms of sustainability and support, and how much they want to actually be behind esports. Because I think what we're seeing is, as budgets are getting slashed, as people, layoffs are happening, things like, it's not a good place right now economically for a lot of people. Esports can become one of those things where people think it's a saving grace, or they think it's something that was never a priority, so now they're going to cut it. So I think that's a big challenge that we have ahead of us, to prove we belong here, and that we shouldn't be like, we're not just a saving grace just to make us look good. It should still be a valuable program.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nessa, Chad, do you have anything to add?
I think I can kind of go off of what Dan said in terms of the misinformation one. That one has been, it's really affected our club just because UVC's admin in particular, again, needing somebody to explain it to them in adulting terms, basically outsourced a bunch of people. I'm not really sure what organization it is, but they were going around essentially trying to sell the cookie cutter type of esports explanation, I guess. And our club took, or not our club, our university basically thought, oh, like we need to make our esports club into a research center for like that's how esports should be, right? We need to research like carpal tunnel and stuff like that. And that's not really, that wouldn't really help our club or our team or our players because we're still at like a very grassroots stage where we haven't really even gotten support from our university. It was pretty much a long fight to even have them allow us to use the varsity term because our mascot at UBC is the Thunderbirds. We weren't even allowed to use that word as part of our team names for the longest time. And it's just been kind of like a long fight to get our club, our university and admin to get more involved with our club and have their support. So I think that misinformation is definitely something that's challenging the collegiate esports world right now. And I think that's why it's so important to have panels like these so that everybody can like pretty much just learn like where to start. And I think that Dan and Chad have like a lot of experience working with their admin and having that like tandem relationship to go off of. And then especially Kathy having an already established esports base on UCI's campus is such a great resource to like look after and try to be inspired by.
Yeah, I mean, I'm envious of your club, honestly, Nessa. Like it's huge. Yes. I like your club model is what I'm trying to get at Maryville over time. Like that's what I want. Yeah.
Our club is so blessed because we come from such a large campus that we're able to get talented players without requiring scholarship money. That's pretty much.
You guys are always scary, and I don't know how you do it.
It's cool. It's cool to look at you guys even from the beginning of collegiate in a lot of different ways for that reason. And I know Dan and I both look up to you in that. So I think that's really cool. I think for me, we're all fairly competitive universities, I would say, in a lot of different esports. And I think when you're a newer school, that can be really intimidating. I don't think that you need to win 24/7 in order to have a successful program. And that's probably my, I think, biggest challenge is that when you're coming in, you got to be like, okay, we got to make a splash. We got to do these things. Like technically, really, no, you don't. You just need to build a quality program for what makes sense for your school at the beginning and build and flesh that part out first and go from there. So don't feel the need to, in my opinion, overcompensate. I see a lot of programs trying to do everything at once and just hoping it all works. Like, don't do that. It doesn't need to be the case. If competition is a goal, that's great. That's a good goal to have, but don't try and force it just for the sake of, feeling that's what you have to do. Know what your university's strengths are and go from there and try and play that up.
Yeah, no, you guys all bring up excellent points, and I think we all learned a heck of a lot from this panel, especially in chat. We could see so much good responses to what you guys have said, because you guys really do have programs that so many people look after and are inspired by. And I do want to thank you guys for being here, because this, like I said before this panel started, is really important to me. It's really important to the people that are here, and it's really important to esports in general, because we do need to have this as a backbone, because it's not just about the professional scene, it's about so much more than that. So I do want to thank you guys for being here. Please, everyone that is attending, I guess, go check out their programs, go check out their booths, and see more about how cool these programs are. And if you're a high schooler, look into these colleges. College is great, and these colleges for esports are absolutely wonderful. So does anyone else have to say anything before we do log off?
I mean, I'm glad that there's a time limit for your sake, Kelsey, because we could talk about this for 42 hours.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah. I just want to say thank you, Kelsey, for moderating and for inviting us. It was great.
No, I'm glad you guys could come. That's for sure. Okay, well, that's it for us today. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we have another panel coming up very shortly, so don't go anywhere. Thanks, guys.